DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. All Elite Wrestling airs a live Rampage tonight on TNT ahead of Sunday's Double or Nothing pay-per-view in Las Vegas. I spoke to CEO Tony Khan about this weekend's events and what it's like being AEW's version of WWE's Vince McMahon. Hey, Tony Khan, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Hey, thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me, man.
Now, of course, you are the, president CEO of All Elite Wrestling, also co-owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, but we're talking AEW. It's all about this interview because tonight we have Rampage on TNT, sort of the, what do they call it? Like the go home show before the big Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Anything you want to tease about tonight? I have so much I want to ask about the pay-per-view, but what can we expect tonight to get geared up for the big day?
Well, tonight is the last stop on the road to Double or Nothing. And it's going to be a huge pay-per-view on Sunday. Tonight on AEW Rampage on TNT, we got some great action to lead up to a big weekend of pro wrestling. We got Bryan Danielson wrestling versus Matt Sydal. Bryan Danielson injured his ankle last week coming out of a big brawl on Rampage. And we're going to see if Danielson's 100% going into Anarchy in the Arena, this wild, wild brawl that we're going to see involving Bryan Danielson, along with Eddie Kingston, Santana Ortiz, and of course, Jon Moxley, teaming up against Chris Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society. And I have to say that it's just going to be absolute chaos, absolute bedlam, but we might just see a really great pro wrestling match here on Rampage with Danielson versus Sydal, two of the best in-ring technicians in the business. So I'm really excited about that on Rampage. I'm also really excited about the Owen Hart Tournament. We just saw on Dynamite on TBS what a great, great match it was. We had Samoa Joe beat Kyle O'Reilly, and now we know that it's Adam Cole versus Samoa Joe for the first time ever on pay-per-view at Double or Nothing on Sunday. And we're going to find out who's going to the women's finals in the Owen Hart Tournament. We know Dr. Britt Baker is qualified, and tonight on Rampage, we're going to see, is it going to be Chris Statlander or is it going to be Ruby Soho getting that big, big opportunity in the finals against Britt Baker? So I'm excited for that. And of course, I think everybody in wrestling is looking forward to this weekend. I don't think there's any match in the sport of wrestling that has got more people talking right now than Hangman Page versus CM Punk for the world title.
Oh yeah, and I want to ask you about all of these things individually, if we could. But you mentioned Owen Hart Cup Tournament. I've always been a big fan of tournaments and wrestlings. I always love Kings of the Rings and now the Owen Hart Cup. But how cool is it that you guys are able to do a tribute, not only exciting action because the tournament style with Samoa Joe, Adam Cole, but also just an honor to one of the greatest ring technicians who sadly we lost way too soon.
Yeah, it's a great thing that we're able to honor the legacy of Owen Hart, the late great Owen Hart. His family were very kind to allow us to use his name and his likeness to do tribute to him with this tournament. And it's been awesome. We kicked off in New York with great matches. We had some great stuff with Darby Allin versus Jeff Hardy in the first round, Tony Storm versus Jamie Hayter, just kicked off with really great matches, and the pace has continued. We just came off an awesome Dynamite on TBS, and I think, the table is set for great tournament finals on Sunday on pay-per-view at Double or Nothing. matches somebody can really look forward to. And it's crazy. Samoa Joe versus Adam Cole. That's a match that's never happened before. It's a dream match. And I think with a lot of great wrestling through this tournament, it's been building to a big final, culmination of a tournament that I really hope has made the Hart family proud and paid tribute to the legacy of such a great wrestler. Like you said, man, Owen Hart is just a legend, and he deserves a great tribute.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the phrase dream match. Another dream match, at least from a tag team standpoint, is going to be the Hardy Boys versus the Young Bucks. I mean, the legendary Hardy Boys versus the Young Bucks who can just fly all over the place. I mean, there's not going to be, we're going to be on the edge of our seats for that one, man.
Well, that's going to be a wild match. And to see the Hardys versus the Young Bucks on pay-per-view, finally, two of the great tag teams of all time, it's something I'm really personally looking forward to. I love tag team wrestling, and these are two of the greats. I think two Hall of Fame tag teams clashing on the biggest wrestling event of the year. You can't beat it. It's just awesome. So I think that's one of the great things on the card for sure.
And you mentioned, of course, the big, scrum between the Jericho Appreciation Society, which to me, my name's Jason. I've always gone by Jay. So I gotta like the JAS. Every time that pops up, I laugh and I love it. I'm a huge Jericho fan, but against Danielson and Mox and all those guys. Count me part of the Jace. But just in general, how cool is it that Jericho's been able to reinvent himself so many times over the years since that big, his big debut, Y2J, all that stuff. But he's just had so many different iterations over the years. And now with AEW, I mean, he helped build the company, let's be honest. But I mean, now he's with the Appreciation Society. Here we get another phase of him. It's unreal how prolific he is.
Well, as you know firsthand, AEW launched in Washington, D.C. with the original AEW Dynamite, and Chris Jericho has been a big part of the company, exactly like you said, man, since day one. He helped launch this place, and the Chris Jericho we are seeing today in AEW is the best Chris Jericho we've ever had. He looks amazing. He's in the best shape certainly he's been in many years, definitely since he arrived in AEW. And that's pretty scary because Chris Jericho is one of the best wrestlers ever in AEW. And exactly like you said, man, since he formed this Jericho Appreciation Society, he's gotten even more dangerous. And I think it's just going to be an awesome, awesome fight this weekend with Moxley, Eddie Kingston, Bryan Danielson, Santana, Ortiz, all going up against Jericho and his guys. The anarchy in the arena is one of the things I'm really looking forward to. But you can't talk about pro wrestling right now and big matches and fights people are excited about without talking about Hangman Page versus CM Punk for the world title.
Stay tuned for the rest of my chat with Tony Khan, but first a message from a fellow WTOP podcast.
DMV Download, the new daily podcast from WTOP News, is out now. Hosts Megan Clorty and Luke Garrett get the story behind the story.
Every weekday afternoon, Megan and I will go beyond the headlines with WTOP reporters and sources to bring you more on the biggest local stories impacting you, our fellow Washingtonians.
The DMV Download podcast is available now on all major podcast platforms. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode. The DMV Download podcast is presented by Steamfitters Local 602.
Welcome back to Beyond the Fame for the rest of my conversation with Tony Khan. Let's definitely go into that main event. It's going to be Hangman Page. He obviously won the title from Kenny Omega a few months ago, which was a huge deal for him. Defending against CM Punk, who's, got a whole cult following, a cult of personality, if you will. But tell me about why this is such an interesting matchup. I mean, in a way, like people that have been two fan favorites for a while going at it.
Yeah. Well, it's, in big sports, a lot of times the fans' favorites are going to collide. And in this case, these are two of the best in the sport. These are two of the most beloved heroes in all of pro wrestling. And it's a dream match people never thought they were going to get to see. A year ago, Hangman Page was working his way up the ladder. People wanted to see Hangman finally beat his old partner, Kenny. It had been building to that for a long time. And when we got there, it was awesome. It was awesome. And since then, Hangman Page has been a great champion, been a fighting champion. And right now, I think he's the best champion in the sport of wrestling. And CM Punk sat out of the sport for 7 years, while the fans were calling for his return. And I think of all the things we've accomplished with AEW since we launched, one of the best things we've done was bring CM Punk back to pro wrestling. And not just coming back to visit. He's been fighting every week, working his way to the top of the ladder. He's been one of the hardest working people in the company. And, you know, for CM Punk to return, we would have rolled out the red carpet and tried to make things as smooth as possible for him. That's not what he wanted. He came in and, just like you, Jason, a lot of the fans saw, he worked his way to the top. He earned that spot at the top of the ladder as the number one contender, win after win after win against big stars, young stars, veterans. You know, he took on all comers, and now we have a great champion, Hangman, versus a great number one contender, CM Punk. It's a dream match, and it's the kind of big match that got me into pro wrestling as a little kid and has kept me coming back for over 30 years as a fan of pro wrestling, which has led us to AEW, All Elite Wrestling.
Oh, it's going to be a great dream match there Sunday on Double or Nothing on pay-per-view. You got to watch it, everybody. I guess final seconds, like, big picture it for me. You know, you said it was a big, awesome coup to get CM Punk to come back, you know, to 7 years off and, you know, sort of leave the rival promotion to come to you guys. The reverse happened with Cody Rhodes, who the American Nightmare, who just left to go to, you know, the rival promotion. But do you view this as, like, now it's sort of like this legit competition here, like the old Monday Night War days, you know? I guess, you know, how do you try to make AEW different from WWE? How do you maybe avoid the pitfalls of WCW that, you know, they beat them for 83 weeks, but then ultimately crumbled? How do you try to differentiate yourself and actually maybe win this thing? Or is it like a rising tide raises all boats? You know, how do you view the whole back and forth ratings battle?
Well, the most important thing is for the wrestling fans to get great shows every week. So for me, I try to concentrate on AEW and how we can make the best wrestling matches to give the fans exciting AEW Dynamites every Wednesday night on TBS. And we got AEW Rampage every Friday on TNT. This is a special week. Double or Nothing only comes once a year. It's where we started up. You know, we just celebrated the 3-year anniversary of the company. That was May 25th. And, you know, Double or Nothing is where it all began. I think for us, we started something really special, man. I mean, Jace, you're very kind to have us on your show. You're a great wrestling fan, and that's something I found is there are a lot of great wrestling fans in all walks of life, including the media, that have been waiting for a company to come along, bring wrestling back to TBS and TNT, where they have such a great tradition. And now with AEW on every week, I just think the best thing we can do is give great wrestling matches to the fans, stuff they can get excited about. And we've been able to do that. You know, we've been able to build great ratings, great support. And it all started there in DC with the original episode of Dynamite. And so I know I can count on you and great wrestling fans in that great market to support AEW and Double or Nothing this weekend. I think the card speaks for itself. It's just big match after big match leading up to a huge main event.
We got to run. All right, everybody, it's All Elite Wrestling. It's going to be Rampage tonight, Double or Nothing on Sunday on pay-per-view. And a final plug, push MJF to the moon. I love the dude. He's you got gold, man. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.